Do you want us to start? Just teasing. Yeah, go ahead. I'd like to call this meeting to order. We would like to begin by acknowledging that the land on which we gather is the traditional territory of the Anishinaabe, Waki, the Ottawa, and Mississaugas people. I would also like to acknowledge that we have our new CBO, Nancy Small, is in attendance today. Nancy, welcome to North Huron.
Thank you very much. Happy to be here.
Thank you. Disclosure of pecuniary interest. Confirmation of the agenda. That the Council of the Township of North Huron hereby accepts the agenda for March 21st, 2022 council meeting as presented. Rick McBurney moves. Kevin Faulkner seconds. All in favor? Carries. I would like, before we go any further, to also say that Anita Van Henderson sends her regrets for tonight. Okay. Disclosure of pecuniary interest. Trevor Sight, Deputy Reeve Trevor Sight.
Yes, thank you, Reeve. Just want to draw attention to council that I will be declaring an indirect conflict of interest on bylaws 10.1 due to my employment relationship with the proposed developers.
Thank you. Okay, public comments. Since we have no public, I'm going to guess we don't need to bother with that one. Consent agenda, that the Council of Township of North Huron hereby adopts consent agenda items 5.1.1, and further that the Council of Township of North Huron hereby receives consent items 5.1.2 to 5.3.4 for information purposes. Would anybody like to pull anything out before we move that? Not seeing any. Could I have a mover? Paul Heffer moves. Seconder, please. Chris Palmer seconds. All in favor? Carries. Thank you. Okay. Public meetings, hearings, and delegations, 6.1. We have a delegation, Jeanette McDonald and Scott Gowan from Viola Water Canada. Are they in the audience? Not seeing them. We shall come back to this later, or?
Yeah, so, I don't know, does the Director of Public Works have an update from them, or?
Yeah. They thought that they had to be here at 6:30.
Okay, so yeah, if council wants to defer that item until the delegates arrive.
Are we fine with that?
That's fine.
I see lots of nodding yes. Okay. We're going to go right into 7 reports, Clerk's Department, 7.1.1. Planner Hallman's going to speak to the cassette application, Douglas A. Colbert, United Ontario Farms. Mrs. Hallman here. Hallman, sorry. Rush, eh?
All right. Thank you for having me this evening. Can everyone hear me okay? Just bring up my presentation. So as mentioned, the next application is consent file C 2422. The applicant in this case is Doug Colbert, representing United Ontario Farms. The following shows 2020 aerial imagery of the subject property. The subject land is designated agriculture with a portion of the land's designated natural environment. It is zoned AG1, general agriculture, NE1, NE2. And it contains an existing dwelling and accessory structures. The purpose of this proposed severance is for a surplus farm severance. The following shows the severance sketch as provided by the applicants, including a close-up of the proposed severed lot. The proposed severed lot is just over 1 hectare in size, about 2.5 acres, and the retained land is approximately 80 hectares or 198, 80 hectares or 198 acres. In terms of site visit photos, the following on the top shows the proposed lot to be severed, which shows the dwelling as well as accessory buildings, and then the below image shows the proposed retained farmland. In terms of comments that were received, as of current, no public comments have been received at this time. Township staff did provide comment indicating no concerns. They do note that an inspection of the septic system will be required, and if an entrance permit is required for the retained farmlands, that an entrance permit would be required from the township for that. So the application was reviewed in accordance with applicable surplus farm dwelling severance policies in the provincial policy statement, as well as the county North Huron official plans, and the application is deemed to meet all of those policy tests. It is recommended that the consent application be approved with the attached conditions contained in the report, as well as my presentation. So these are the conditions here, most of which council will note are standard. In addition, that condition for the septic system inspection, and if required, that an entrance permit be obtained. So I'm happy to answer any questions that council may have.
Thank you very much. Questions from council? Go ahead, Councillor Faulkner.
Through you, Reeve. Just for clarification, some problems that we've had early on in our council careers with some land splitting. Does it change that 2.5 acres with the large barn on there? Does it eliminate them from having livestock in that barn?
Yes, so through your worship, this has been an issue that has been raised locally as well as at the county quite a few times over the years. The challenge with regulating livestock is there's really no mechanism in the Ontario legislative landscape for regulating nutrient units. So as a result of that, we generally try to discourage people from, creating small farms where they're going to have livestock if they don't have the land base to spread manure. So we generally try to discourage people from doing that. It's just very challenging to enforce that. Typically, when we're pre-consulting with applicants, we will ask them what they intend to use the structures for, and a lot of them will say, storage or an accessory use to their residence. So.
Because this looked like it was a fairly substantial structure. It's not a shed, it was a full barn, so I was curious. Okay, thank you.
Sorry, go ahead, Deputy Site.
Yes, Reeve, thank you. The one thing I was going to ask, and it's more to do with the road access, as you've indicated, the entrance permit. If the people who are maintaining the existing lot, if they allow, if the severed piece is then owned by somebody else or developed by somebody else, it is not required for us to get involved in if they want to use the existing lane from the house that was on the severed property before. That would just be an agreement between the companies or people involved in that property. There's nothing that would require us. The only requirement that we're indicating is that you want a secondary lot lane to that farm property, that you require an entrance permit. Is that correct? Am I reading that properly?
Yes, so through your worship, yeah, that is correct. We really wouldn't have any mechanism if they have an agreement with the person that owns the surplus lot if they want to use those existing entrances. I think the important thing when we're looking at creating a new lot is just making sure that it at least has frontage on a public roadway, just to ensure that if they want to have their own unique access, they do have that option. And in terms of requiring an entrance permit, again, the condition is if they require it. If they already have an existing entrance, they might not be interested in that. It's just usually, it's just kind of a catch-all to make sure if you are going to put in an entrance, it is preferred that you get an entrance permit so that it can be located appropriately in terms of where it's located to intersections or other considerations. So.
Go ahead, Trevor.
So as a follow-up, Hannah, so when we do the review, do we inspect to see how many entrances this property has onto the property? Like, I mean, arguably what you're saying is if you need an entrance, you need to get a permit, but if you already have one, you don't need one. So I'm guessing, my question is that if they already had an entrance, would that clause be necessarily required? Because if they were to want a secondary one from an existing one, they would need, that's simple, they would still need the entrance permit regardless of whether they or because of the severance or not. Like, if the severance had went through and and that permit wasn't there, that clause wasn't there, and they wanted another entrance, they would that's part of the bylaws, they would require an entrance permit regardless, correct?
Yes, through your worship, sorry. Yes, that is correct. They would require that either way. I think the benefit of having it, and again, we try to make the language flexible, saying if required, you know, if they have an existing entrance already, well, then that's a condition that they don't necessarily need to address. It's just typically the entrance permit is dealt with, you know, if you have a building permit,
Yep.
that's something that usually gets paired with that and it's dealt with, whereas with these retained farm lots, they typically aren't going to have any development on there. It's just going to stay as cropland. So I can see what you're saying. It might be a little bit redundant as a condition, but that's why we try to phrase the wording just to have a little bit of flexibility. If they need it, you should get an entrance permit. If you don't need an additional entrance, then that's not something that you have to do at this time.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. Any other questions? Go ahead, Councilor Palmer.
Yeah, thank you, Reeve. I was just going to say that farm is just down the road from where we are, and it's got an entrance. It's got an open creek on an angle behind all this, behind what will be severed. So in a sense, the farm is in one little piece and a big piece. So the little piece has an existing drive-in, and the rest, they access it down the side road. And there's really no ditch, and they just go on where they need to, so I don't think it'll be an issue. And I think they definitely understand if they were going to get something put down proper, they'd get a permit.
Thank you. Anyone else?
Just I'll move the motion, Reeve.
I have a mover. Do I have a seconder? Chris Palmer seconds. That the Council of the Township of North Huron hereby recommends approval of the consent application file number CO 24-2022, applicant owner Douglas A. Colbert, OLS United Ontario Farms Limited. Property description, lot 40, concession 10, East Wabanash Ward, Township of North Huron, 39703 Belfast Road, with the conditions set out with the Huron Planning and Development Report, presented by Hannah Holman, planner, at the March 21st, 2022 council meeting. We have movers? All in favor? Carries. Okay, Hannah, go ahead with the next one if you like.
So the next application is for C2522. The subject property here is 85004 Curry Line. Applicant again is Doug Colbert, with the owners being United Ontario Farms Limited. The following shows an aerial view of the subject property. The subject lands are designated agriculture and zoned AG1 general agriculture. The property does contain an existing dwelling and accessory structures. The following shows the proposed severance and severance sketch as provided by the applicant. The severed lands are approximately 0.7 hectares or 1.7 acres, with the retained land being approximately 35 hectares or 88 acres. The following shows site visit photos of the property, again showing the dwelling on the top photo and then the retained farmlands on the bottom. In terms of comments that were received, there was one written comment that was received from a neighbor to the subject lands to the south. This was included in council's package this evening for their review. So just to provide a bit of background on this comment, upon receiving the circulated public notice within the severance sketch as was provided by the applicant, so again, just keeping in mind the applicant is Doug Colbert, who is a surveyor, so he did prepare that, his office prepared that survey. The neighbors did have some concerns about the location of the southern lot line that abuts their property, as they were under the impression that it was located in a different place. Staff were able to follow up both with this member of the public as well as the applicant on the matter. It was understood at the time that there was a potential area of discrepancy up to approximately 4 hectares or 10 acres. That was, the neighbor felt that was part of their property, and the applicants felt that was part of their their client's property. So the neighbor and the applicant were able to connect, and the applicant of the file, as they are an Ontario land surveyor, agreed to go out and site and investigate the southern property line. I have received a follow-up from Doug Culbert's office as of this morning. They just indicated that they were able to investigate this further with the neighbor, and they were able to find a reference plan from when the subject lot was originally severed, approximately 30 years ago, and they were able to verify that the lot line in this case is consistent with what they have presented in their severance sketch. So just so council has a bit of background on how that comment has since been resolved. However, my review and analysis included in my report was conducted with this potential discrepancy in mind, particularly as it relates to the minimum lot size required for the retained lands, and also ensuring that this discrepancy didn't affect the area proposed to be severed. So it's the planning department's opinion that this discrepancy doesn't necessarily have any bearing on this subject application tonight, but just to provide a little bit of background to that comment, which has since been addressed. In terms of comments received from staff, so township staff have indicated no concerns, again, providing comments that speak to the inspection of a septic system and an entrance permit if that is required. The application was reviewed in accordance with the applicable surplus farm dwelling severance policies. The application is consistent with the provincial policy statement and conforms to the county North Huron official plans. It is recommended that the application be approved with the attached conditions. Here are the conditions that were also included in my report. Council will note that these are the same conditions presented in the previous severance, just noting the two special conditions for the septic system and road access. So I'm happy to answer any questions that council may have.
Questions? Go ahead, Councillor Palmer.
Thank you, Reeve, and through you, Hannah. I'm just curious, looking at the picture of the house, it's an interesting roof it's got. Is it still in good shape?
Yes, so I understand through speaking with the applicants that they are going through some repairs on the house, but otherwise it's deemed habitable.
Okay.
Go ahead, Councillor Faulkner.
Through you, Reeve, and I'm not sure who can answer this question. It's just an informative question for myself. When these type of severances come up and houses and barns are being severed off from larger pieces of property, and then the farm property becomes a vacant piece of property, the taxation must change from a residential to, or from agricultural to residential on the building portion. And what I'm curious is to whose benefit is the benefit to the vacant landowner would now have less taxes to pay and the homeowner pays more, or are we losing out on? I just hate to see this become a pattern of people getting rid of the farmhouses and just for tax reasons. I don't know. That's the reason why I'm asking. What changes?
Thank you. Through your worship, unfortunately, I don't know enough about how MPAC assesses taxation or what it would be classified as, so I don't really know enough to be able to comment on that.
Go ahead, Councillor Palmer.
Thank you, Reeve. Yeah, I think it'll be a net gain. Yeah, because one offsets the other. The taxation will still be on the house, and it relates to that house in town. It's kind of how they look at it. And of course, the farmer will pay less, but the new homeowner will pay their share, and it'll be the same. Should be.
Okay. Anyone else? Not seeing anyone.
Oh,
Go
sorry.
ahead, Trevor.
Yeah, Hannah, the question that you were talking about, the survey, does that mean, does the information that you've received through Mr. Culbert's office and the person who had the issue potentially, does that alleviate the recommendation of the conditions for a survey plan? Does that remove that requirement because I guess that solution has been rectified? Is that correct? So my question is that our motion should be in essence amended to take out that survey reference plan condition. Is that, I just want to make sure I'm clear.
Go ahead.
Through your worship. So the requirement for the survey has to do with the new smaller lot that's going to be created. That would still have to be surveyed because that that parcel has not been
Right.
surveyed yet, because it hasn't went through the severance process. So that's the only condition that speaks to surveys for that new surplus lot. And regardless of that potential discrepancy, that's still being required. We haven't attached any conditions that speak to, confirming what that southern lot line is, because our department felt that was something those two parties could work through together, which they have since, so.
Thank you very much, Hannah, for that clarification. I will move that motion, the recommended motion, Reeve.
Seconder, please. I have Rick McBurney, second. That file numbers CO 25-2022, Douglas A. Colbert, OLS United Farms Limited. Property description, concession 8, northwest part, lot 40, part 1 on 22R-1572 East Wabanach Ward, Township of North Huron, better known as 85004 Curry Line. And that the Council of the Township of North Huron hereby recommends the approval of the consent application file C025-2022, application owner Douglas A. Colbert, OLS United Ontario Farms Limited, property description, concession 8, northwest part of lot 40, part 1 of 22R-1572 East Wabanach Ward, Township of North Huron, better known as 85004 Quarry Line, with the conditions set out in the Huron County Planning Department report presented by Hannah Coleman, planner, on the March 21st, 2022 council meeting. All in favor? Carries. Thank you.
So if I may, your worship, I think now would be a good time for us to go back to the delegation from Veolia.
Oh, they showed up. Thank you very much, Hannah. Thank you, Carson. Good evening.
Hi, everybody.
Good evening. I'm Scott Gowan. I'm the project manager with Veolia in Walkerton, but I'm helping out a little bit in North Huron these days. So, and this is Jenna. She's one of the operators here for North Huron.
All right, so to get started, yes, I'm Jenna. So I'm one of the operator faces on the ground. So tonight we've just prepared the regular slideshow that we normally have for you guys. So we're going to start off with some water. I don't know why you guys can't see that whole slide.
I'm allowed to do this or not? There we go. A little bit.
So for Wingham Water, for the maintenance improvements and projects completed, all of our routine maintenance and corrective maintenance, proactive maintenance, it was all completed. All of our work orders were completed as normal. Our generator at well 3 did get serviced in the past year, as well as the generator at well 4, and the battery did get replaced. All of our normal hydrant flushing for both towns were completed. We did have one water main break in in Wingham, but it was repaired and back to normal. And then same with Blythe Water, all of the maintenance was performed as normal. We had no setbacks in that. All of the generators for all of the sites did get serviced, water and sewage. The hydrant flushing was completed. Our well pumps at well 1 and 2, we ran into a couple little issues. So well 1, we found that once it was inspected that the well pump itself, the submersible, had to be replaced. Both wells ended up getting relined and sampled, and all samples came back clear there, so they are in service, running as normal. We also had another water main break in Blythe, and we are in the process of getting that new subdivision underway for, as some of you guys might know it as the Rutledge subdivision. I have commissioned the water main, so it is all in and going. It's just the services are in, and then once they put in houses, that's all on them. So for our ministry inspections this year, Wingham Drinking Water, we did not get an inspection for 2021. So this is the same as last year, well, 2 years ago inspection. So it was with a 97.78 inspection rating. We did have one non-compliance, which was resolved within Veolia's hub, and all of the operators impacted were then put through a little training session, and everything was signed off on it. The Blythe drinking water system inspection we just had in October. We have not received the rating yet from our inspector, which we're still waiting. There's been constant emails back and forth with him. So we're still waiting on that. But as far as you guys all know, the only thing come up with that was the strontium levels. Just so you guys all know, we did complete a 1-year sampling program with the health unit, just so that they could collect enough data for them to show that it is not extremely high levels to hurt anybody, or just public health was very highly involved with us. The regular level is normally like 7 milligrams per liter, and we were anytime between 14 milligrams per liter and 44 milligrams per liter. Any questions that the health unit has with that, or the general public has with it, most of the health related questions will then get passed on right to the health unit. If there's any questions that the township receives that they think Veolia can comment on, we have been more than welcome and more than happy to answer anything that we can. But with the public health involved, we like to let the professionals do it. So we also provided this little graph for you guys, because I think it's a lot easier to see the data than me just talk numbers at you guys. So as you guys can see, our daily peak flow, all of our numbers were within the permit to take water. Our combined averages were well below. So everything was good there. There are a couple percentages there for you guys to see them. Well 3 was 21.3% of the permit to take water. Well 4 was 18.1%. So there's still lots of room in there for upcoming subdivisions and all that fun stuff. For Blythe, again, we put together this little graph for you guys. So again, the water taking within Blythe residents, it's been well under our permit to take water. There's been no concerns on that side of it. Again, the well 1 and 2, well 1 was 68%, well 2 was 28%, and well 5 was 27% of our maximums of what we're allowed to use. So just some water quality data for you guys. So within the distribution system, there was 470 samples taken, and that is just our chlorine residuals within the town, and we've managed to make sure that we take from different places of the town, just to make sure that any kind of quieter streets where there's not as much water usage, the chlorine residual is still lots up there. Our average residual in town was 1.00 milligrams per liter, which is really good. We had 365 treated water chlorine residuals, and they were all within the required limits. So that would be taken during our sample days, and we also have online chlorine analyzers, as some of you guys might know. And then same with well 4, all of those chlorine residuals were also within the required limits. For Blythe distribution, there was 468 samples taken. The average residual, again, was 1.00 milligrams per liter. 365 treated water chlorine residuals taken from the well 1 and 2. Everything was okay there. Same with well 5, and it was also within all of the required limits. So for any adverse sample results, for 2021, Wingham had no adverse sample results. And for Blythe, we did have one adverse sample result from a total coliform hit on well 1 and 2, the POE. It came through on our analysis as a 1, and we then resampled, and samples were cleared, and that AWQI has now been resolved. And that has all been communicated with the ministry as well. All right, and this is where I'm going to switch over to Scott.
All right, thanks, Jenna. Yeah, I guess I better get close to the mic. All right, I'm just going to run through the wastewater end of things here. So as far as maintenance and improvements and capital projects, for Wingham, basically the routine maintenance was performed, and then there was some oil changes and extra cleaning on the UV lights completed as well. For Blythe, similar, all of the regular maintenance was completed. And then we also had some flight pump repairs. Those were at the Blythe sewage pumping station, and the generator was serviced there as well. Looking at the capacity data, on a daily average, there's still quite a bit of capacity remaining at these sites. At the maximum peak flow, we get a little bit closer to the limits on the wastewater end of things. Wingham, it's not as much of an issue as there's the lagoons there that can be used to provide extra capacity. Blythe, during the peak flows, does get closer to that maximum capacity. So as far as wastewater system bypasses in 2021, there were none in Wingham. In Blythe, there were some. There was 4 events. One of them was a primary bypass, so that's where essentially the whole treatment plant needed to be bypassed. That was as a result of a mechanical equipment failure. There have since been some additional measures put in place that should avoid a similar incident from occurring. Some extra alarms and a float system that should prevent that from reoccurring. The other 3 bypasses were secondary bypasses. So this occurs when the filters at the end of the treatment process can't keep up with the flows that are coming to them. So in that case, only the filtration step is bypassed. So we're still getting some good treatment. However, we're unable to do that filtration stage. It just can't keep up with the flow. I believe all of these events were tied to wet weather events. I should confirm, Jenna, the raw one as well. So yeah. Oh, wrong button. Thank you. So the wastewater quality summary, we're seeing some really solid removal numbers from both sites. 98% of the biological oxygen demand was removed. That's kind of a measure of the strength of the waste. So that's showing us that the strength of the waste is significantly reduced going into the receiving body there. 97.8% of total suspended solids were removed, 90% of phosphorus, and 96.5% of TKN, total kajidal nitrogen removal. That's always a fun one for the slideshows. For Blythe, again, solid numbers here. Basically 99% BOD removal, 98% TSS, or total suspended solids, I should say. 96% phosphorus, and 98% TKN. So there is another note here that bypasses occur more often at Blythe because of the sand filters can only handle so much during those high flow events. As far as non-compliant sample results go, there were no non-compliant results for either Wingham or Blythe for 2021. Just a couple of extra comments here. So the Blythe effluent discharge in 2021, we began dechlorinating the effluent at Blythe as part of the federal regulation requirements. So it started out using dechlor pucks. It was then switched to Vita dechlor powder for the dechlorination, and I know we're looking at switching again to a newer chemical for dechlor. And I'll let Jenna, I think Jenna talked a little bit about the strontium already, but if there's anything further you want to add.
Yeah, I don't know, this might be a good time to ask you guys if you guys have any questions related to the strontium, just before we move on.
Go ahead.
Yeah, curious. Thank you, Reeve. It's just curious. Strontium's everywhere, isn't it?
Yeah, so it's a naturally occurring level in all waters, well, groundwater. And the only main concern with it is within, excuse me, sorry, pregnant women and young children, as it replaces the calcium in their bones with strontium, which creates rickets, which is like a bone deformity or a bone weakening, is what it creates. But to our knowledge, within Blythe, there hasn't been any cases of rickets in children or any problems with the pregnant women.
Is there a way of dealing with it if it becomes a problem?
That half of it is on the health unit. So as soon as they have more data on it, then we can look at the proactive ways to take it out of the wastewater, or out of the water. But for right now, we don't have any ways to take it out.
Thank you, Deputy Reeve Sight.
Yes, thank you, Reeve. The one, I don't have any real question, but I do want to say that, Veolia, here in Public Health, the township staff, they have been very forthcoming with information, not only to residents, but to council as to what's going on. Is there things that we need to look at? I mean, I haven't heard anything from any residents that would indicate that they're concerned about all from their water in Blythe. Maybe the Blythe members may have better, but I think we've done everything that we can in order to make people aware about what's going on. And like I said, I think Jenna made it very clear, if they have health concerns or they have concerns, please be all mind and talk to Huron Public Health. I mean, Huron Public Health is going to help them more than us. From a counselor perspective, I know from a deputy, I'm not a physicist or a water quality person. I mean, I'm going to look for scientists to tell us what's the best options to go for. And I mean, I think the real key for us is to keep people in the know about what's going on. And I think Veolia, town staff, and here in Public Health have done, an amazing job in at least getting information out with our water bills and stuff like that. So I appreciate what they've been doing.
Thank you very much. Anyone else? Go ahead. We're going to start with Chris first, then over to Rick McBurnett.
Thank you, Reeve. I have two questions, if that's all right.
Yeah, go ahead.
For our citizens, North Huron citizens of that use the Belgrave water system.
Right.
Now, if there was an issue there, you would let us know, our Works Department know?
Absolutely, yeah. So when it comes to the Belgrave water system, it's actually the Huron Kinloss guys that look after it through an agreement with Morris Turnberry that was made. So we actually don't look after the Belgrave water per se, but down the road, if that is something that you guys wanted to look at, we would be.
Yeah, but the point is, would we be told about it if there was an issue?
Absolutely.
Yeah, all right, thank you. And second, it seems like the stormwater,
Like this. Sewage?
Like
No.
infiltration?
No, I'm thinking, I might not be using the right term. It's off the roads, storm drain, I'm thinking. Now that enters the system and that's what overdoes it in most cases.
So for Blythe per se with our wastewater, it isn't so much the stormwater drains that create our problem, it's the infiltration. And way back when they were putting in the sanitary system in the town, it was okay to connect your drains to the sanitary system and your sub pumps and anything kind of in your basement. People would attach them in to help get the water away. It wouldn't go out on their lawn that way. And so that is where we're seeing a lot of the high capacity is as soon as it rains, people's sub pumps are running. Any leakage within the town, we have so much infiltration that our filters can't handle it.
So you wouldn't dare exit it out at the creek, say in Belgrave? A natural, like just run the pipe out into the creek? Because it's coming off the roads anyway.
Yeah, so I'm trying to think of how to answer this. What I'm thinking is when it comes to the stormwater, yes, it's exited out into a receiving body, but the sanitary system is what overloads the Blythe sewage plant. Sorry if I'm not answering that correctly.
Yeah, if I could just mention too, and no, I think Jenna's on the right track there. I think it's maybe less a problem with the water from the roads. It's probably more the sump pumps and roof drains and things of that nature that are kind of currently tied into the sanitary system. Much of the stormwater from the roads should at least it is essentially going almost directly to the creeks and rivers via the storm network. There is a separate storm network, if I'm not mistaken, from the sanitary. It's just sometimes that stormwater can also find its way into our sanitary system as well, either through those sump pumps or maybe possibly the odd drain in the road too. Hopefully not, but that's something that could be further investigated too.
Okay.
Yeah, see you, Reed Bailey. I'm glad the health board's involved in regards to that storm. But is there a way to remove that?
As of right now, we can't say that there's a way to remove it. The health unit hasn't suggested anything on that part. So on our side of it, we are going to do some research into if there's anything we can suggest to council, whether people put a filter in their house or if there's something we can do at the water source. But right now, no, we don't have a way of removing it.
Because those health issues in regards to, what do you call that?
Rickets?
Rickets? It's almost a shame to wait for that to happen to find out.
Oh, absolutely.
That was my thought.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I'm a little bit new at this stage in the game. I've been helping out for a couple weeks now, but I was saying to Jenna before the presentation, it's something I'd like to look a little bit more into, just to get more knowledge on as well.
Okay. Thank you.
Go ahead, Kevin.
I think it's three. I have two questions, one for staff and one for Violi. I'll start with staff. Regarding the stormwater or this roof drainage infiltration into the sewage in Blythe, do we not have a bylaw that says you're not allowed to do that? I'm just wondering why that bylaw isn't effective enough to stop the.
I think Jamie's going to speak to that.
Okay.
Go ahead, Jamie.
Through Reed Bailey to Councillor Faulkner, I'll look into the bylaw in regards to connection, like a cross connection between your storm, some pumps going into the sanitary. There are times where that might be a little bit difficult to implement if there's not a clear path for the sump pump water to get to, if there is no storm directly in front of the house, or if there's no way to discharge the water onto their lawn or whatnot. It may not be as easy as to say the enforcement may not be there because I can't go into somebody's basement to see who's connected and who's not.
I'll just Thanks, Jamie. I'll just follow up on that a bit before we go any further. So way back when I was on council before, we did have a bylaw. We did have a situation where, I can't think of the fellow's name that ran the PUC at the time, we had decided as a council that they were going to go and investigate on, it was mostly Blythe because we were overflowing the septic pond, whatever you call that, quite a bit back in those days. And they were going to run a smoke bomb or something. I forget how it actually worked, and then it was going to filter back up into the house. The house owner would complain, and then we'd ask them to disconnect because it was going to cost, if I recall, millions and millions of dollars to upgrade the lagoon system when they could simply unhook that hose and run it out on their front lawn free of charge. Just throwing that out there. Did you have another question?
Yeah, my second question was, going back to the overflow graph that you had there, you were showing that during the peak times they were getting close to the capacities, and this pertains to either Wingham or Blythe in the system. Since we're looking at hopefully expanding the homes in our neighborhoods, and if that peak is there, can you give us a rough idea of how many homes we can have before that's too late?
So with Wingham, you do have a bit of that extra security because of the lagoons. I would say with Wingham, you don't have to be as concerned. I can't give you an estimated house number. Blythe, it is a lot more concerning, as even with what we have now, any type of rainfall we get, you're basically at that plant bypassing it. We do our best to try and mitigate that and minimize how many times we bypass, because you don't want the wastewater going into receiving streams. That's hard on the aquatic life down there. We do what we can on our side of it, but just the plant can't handle it. So whether we look at just some suggestions for future is a stormwater holding tank, like an equalizing tank, so it holds all the water and we bring it in as we can handle it at peak capacity, as much as we can for as long as we can. But yeah, to give you an exact, or an estimate of how many houses, I can't really do that because it's totally different. Like if we have a wet spring, a drier spring, it's really weather dependent.
And yeah, it's not a uncommon issue to have, I'll say that too. But anything you can do to reduce that infiltration type thing, you're kind of gaining capacity back, because if you look at your average numbers, you have quite a bit of capacity, but it's more when you look at those peaks that are the concern right now. So
It's just a concern if we have people looking at expanding and building homes in our area, that put the cart before the horse. Thank you very much for those comments.
Deputy Reeve Sight?
Yeah, one thing I do want to mention is that, to follow up to Councillor Faulkner's question, I know BM Ross has been involved significantly as to our water and wastewater plans. So, I mean, they're more than aware of the situations that we have in Blythe. And I mean, as council should be aware, there was some conversations during our last, when they presented the wastewater plan, as to what issues we had in Blythe and potentially some investment that we're going to have to make in the future as to, as Jenna had mentioned, a holding tank or some other change to that plan, that infrastructure in Blythe, to ensure that we're not overcapacitating arguably right now that is the biggest thing. We have more growth from a housing perspective in Blythe than we do in Wingham at this particular point. So I think Councillor Faulkner's point is real. We don't want to make sure we're not taking we're not going before and making it worse before we have an actual plan in place. So I think as we're walking through this and we're dealing with that, I think consultation with BM Ross is going to continue over the next probably 4 years or so when we have that wastewater plan updated.
Thank you very kindly. Anyone else? No? Did you want to continue, or was that?
That is everything
That's
we have for
everything.
you guys tonight.
Well, thank you very coming out. Oh, go ahead, Paul.
So through you, Reeve, to Janice, she gave numbers about the capacity in the Wingham was 21% and 18% for the maximum capacity, like the peak capacity. Now, how long is that peak capacity? Is that X number of days? Because overall it says, I think it's 10% and 7%.
Right.
So is that just a couple of days a year, or?
Yeah, so those numbers are all related to the daily data that we collect every day. So it would just be over a certain amount of days. That's all.
So overall, it's 10 and 7, like you say, on the average.
Yeah.
Okay, thank you.
And I don't have a pen right
Thank you very kindly. Okay,
now. Thank you.
Thank you for having us tonight, guys.
thanks, guys. So could I get a motion for 6.1 as printed?
I will move it. Reeve?
I have Deputy Sice moving, I have Chris Palmer seconding. All in favor? Carries. Thank you. I believe we're down to 7.2.1, Carson?
That's correct, Your Worship.
Thank you. We're going to have Director Chapman come and speak to 7.2.1 for us before we, oh, sorry, just for questions for him. So you see what's on before you again, the reserves and reserve fund balances. Are there any questions for Mr. Chapman? Not seeing any. Good. Go ahead, Trevor.
Sorry, Reeve, I just wanted to just confirm, this is is this after the audit has been completed, Mr. Chapman?
Through your worship, we are working on the audit right now, finalizing it, but we're 95% there, so I would assume that the reserve balances that you see in this report are what will be at year end with the presented with the financial statements.
Thank you very kindly. Any other questions? Not seeing any. Do I have a mover? I have Kevin Faulkner moving. Seconder, please. Rick McBurney seconding. All in favor? Carries. Thank you. 7.2.2 is the Wingham and Blythe Business Improvement Budget approvals. If there's no question from councilors, could I have a mover and seconder, or questions if you have them? Not seeing any questions.
I will move.
Deputy Site moves. Could I have a seconder? I have Kevin Faulkner seconding. All in favor? Carries. Thank you. We have no recreation services tonight. We have no public service tonight. Fire Department. That the Council of the Township of North Huron hereby receives the report, which you've all had a chance to read, for the Fire Chief dated March 21st, 2022 for information purposes. Is there any questions? Go ahead, Kevin.
I guess it's not much of a question, it's more of a statement. I see in the agreement that's proposing that we join with Morris Turnberry in this radio system. I just would like to just have my own personal thought there that I don't think we should be going through with any kind of an agreement with Morris Turnberry on life services when we have absolutely no correspondence over the last 4 years as to other agreements we've had with them. See, this department is for a fire radio system, and they want to use it for their PUC. My own thought would be, if we can't have a system on our own, we shouldn't be trying to partner with someone that doesn't want to talk to us. That's just my own.
I found it a little odd that their work department was on this. Did you want to talk to that? No?
It's not that they're combined systems, they're still separate systems. So it's not like we're relying on them or they're reliant on us when the system's up and running. That would be
Just a financial arrangement?
Yeah.
Okay. Anyone else? Go ahead, Councillor Palmer.
Thank you, Reeve. I think it's silly to divide stuff up, to throw it in the wind. If we can have an agreement with them or anybody over an issue that's important, I think we're just darn stupid if we don't. They're sharing the costs. My only question was, they received a grant and we didn't. I know it was a year before. How come we didn't do it a year before, or just, could you bring us up to speed, Marty?
We looked into it the year before, and we were told it didn't comply with the grant rules, application rules. So we didn't apply then. But we found out they did receive the grant. We applied, but it was rejected. So I don't know what the reasoning was that they received it. No idea.
One per project, maybe?
Go ahead, Kevin.
Just curious, they're probably unattainable information, but the grant they applied for, are they using the whole grant for this proposal, or are they putting some money back in their council and only wanting to partner with us so they only have to pay half of the grant that they got and they keep the rest?
If they only spend so much of the grant, they would have to,
give it back?
yes.
Would
with any
they be
grant.
able to do the system with the grant that they have?
Pardon?
Would they be able to do their own system with the grant that they have? Well, I just don't know why they're coming on with us.
I don't think they got a full, like, the total amount that you saw there was 166. They didn't get that much in their grant.
So they're wanting someone else to no, I'll be quiet.
Well, that was pretty loud, actually. Okay, anyone else? Go ahead,
Yeah,
Chris.
thank you, Reeve. So if we partnered, that's 103 as a total, and we shared, or is it 103 each?
103 each.
All right.
And we have the money available for this?
In reserves.
In reserves? Go ahead, Kevin.
Would an implementation of a fire service upgrade not be shared through all the other fire departments that we're in this agreement with?
Marty?
We do that with trucks, we do that with hoses, we do that with everything else.
Everybody has their own systems right now. I'm not sure what you're referring to. as far as-
It's capital. I mean, it's same as a truck, same as a bunker gear.
Yep.
And that gets split. And
Oh, yeah.
are we not being required to upgrade that radio system? Because
Oh, yeah, it's going to be, like, the reserves are shared by all the agreement partners. Yes.
but none of that's would be utilized for this system.
Yes, it is. Yes. Through the reserves. So everybody pays their share into the reserves through the budget, and that's what we're using. So everybody's paying their share.
And then Morristown is offering to pay more then. I don't
They're
get that.
paying their share of the fire side of it.
They'd have to put that in anyway, wouldn't they?
No, so they're paying their share for the public works, and then they have to put their share in for fire as well, whatever that is.
Thank you.
So at the end of the, go ahead, Paul.
Yes, through you, Reeve. Yeah, at the end of the day, I feel instead of paying 166, we get it for 103. I think it's a win for us, so that's my way I'll be voting.
Can we
Go
offer
to
to get
Ken.
that for 1.5% or 1.5 and never have to pay for it again?
Chris, go ahead.
Yeah, thank you, Reeve. I guess pulling it out of reserves and not spending it on equipment instead just means that we're going to have to do the equipment next year, so it's still coming out of the budget, and there'll be budget money going into reserves, so we're paying it anyways. I guess my biggest question was, do we really need it? I know you talked about having some dead spots. I don't know how bad they are. We've lived a long time without it. You know, do you bet your career on it? Something we need?
So I think I'll answer that one. So I think we should spend the money because at the end of the day, we don't want dead spots anywhere. You don't know where an accident or fire is going to happen. you don't know when you're the one on the side of the road
I
that needs help.
understand, yep.
So I kind of know where you're going to, so it's good, guys. But this is for the safety of our fire department at the end of the day, period, stop there. This is safety for them, and I think that trumps everything. Go ahead, Kevin.
I'd like to make a motion or an alteration to the request that North Huron how do you word this? That North Huron will finance its own system. Thank you for the. It's an upgrade that we need anyway, and I don't want to see the Morris Turnberry implementation of it at this time. So I don't know whether I'll get a seconder for that or how that's going to word out, but
So
at least I'll throw a motion out there.
Yeah, so there's a motion on the floor. Before I ask for a seconder, how does that affect the financing? Like, how does that affect you guys, the fire department? Because at the end of the day, we want these repeaters for our fire department.
So if I understand this correctly, what he's asking for is that we do it ourselves at 166,000 and not do it with Morris Turnberry. However, if you were to do that, you couldn't do it within the budget limits that we have right now. So you would be $63,000 short.
But we would also be including our own PUC upgrading their radio systems that they require as well.
If you add in our own public works, there would be extra costs on top of that. The equipment, every time somebody joins in, you've got that equipment cost on top of everything. So that would change the price as well.
So
in the quote that you had there, that said that the equipment that we were using now is up to date enough that we wouldn't have to buy new equipment. It was in your report that the radios we use now.
Oh, the radios.
Yes, that's the equipment. I'm not sure what you're talking about. You're talking
The
towers?
equipment I'm talking about is the
Repeaters and towers, yeah.
The repeaters are $20,000 a piece. You need one repeater for each agency at each site.
So at the end of the day, we did not come, the staff did not equip us with costing or request for any upgrades. So we have a motion on the floor. Did anybody want to second that motion?
So maybe I'll read it back just for clarity. So the motion moved by Councillor Falconer would be that the Council of the Township of North Huron hereby receives the report of the Fire Chief dated March 21st, 2022 for information purposes, and further that Council directs for the North Huron Fire Department to proceed with the project exclusive of the Morris Turnberry Public Works Department.
So we have Kevin Faulkner moving. Do we have a seconder? Last chance for a seconder to raise his hand. I see no seconder. So then we will, would anybody like to, would you want further discussion, or would somebody like to move this motion? Well,
I will move the motion as determined for discussion purposes.
thank you. Kevin, you had your hand up?
Well, just for discussion.
Yep.
In this,
Oh, Kevin, just a second. I don't have a seconder.
Yeah.
Sorry. Chris seconds. Okay, now go ahead, Kevin.
in this scenario, they're getting a grant, and we're tagging on with it to get it for our fire department, which they would have to pay for their share in the agreement, but they're getting their full PUC done with it. And we're not. It doesn't seem fair to me. It's just, there's something, it's like they're not using it for the fire, they're using it for their PUC, and we're just tagging on to get the fire department done.
I think, Trevor, did you have your hand up?
Yeah, I did.
And then I'll go to you, Chris.
So if I recall, there was a motion that this council mentioned prior to this report that basically indicated and asked the fire chief to do this, to partner with Morris Turnberry, or to come back with a report that talked about partnering with Morris Turnberry. Morris Turnberry is paying their fair share. The way I understand and the way I read this, Morris Turnberry is paying their fair share of the equipment that is necessary for them, because they got a grant should not be a disapproval for us. They applied, they got it. The ministry has to determine on how they did that. nobody can explain, if anybody can explain how any ministry grants get absolutely approved, I'm sure every municipality would love to know, because that's how they would apply every time. So I think we can't punish, the idea of punishing, and punishing isn't the word, but going on our own, if we go on our own, we're adding additional cost to a project that we could basically use, and yes, Morris Turnberry could use it as well, but Morris Turnberry is they're paying their fair share. Like, it's not as if they're getting a free ride. Like, they're paying their share through the reserve, as well as they're part of the costs associated with the equipment outside of the reserve. So, I mean, from my perspective, no different than anything else, you would want a partnership to lower a municipality's costs. That equipment is ours. It's North Huron Fire's equipment. So if we want to use that later on, and for whatever reason, it's our equipment. It's not Morris Turnberry's equipment. It's our equipment. We're just using Morris Turnberry as a benefit to get lower pricing, is the way I'm reading it. I'm looking at the fire chief and he's shaking his head, assuming that my belief is what I'm believing. So, I mean, arguably, from my perspective is, if it's our equipment and we're directing on how that equipment is being used and authenticated and all of that stuff, what's the negative? I don't see a negative. That's my comments, Reeve.
Thank you. I'm going to go to Councillor Palmer first, and then back over to Councillor Faulkner.
Yeah, thank you, Reeve. Yeah, we want a partner to reduce the cost, and I dare say if we went alone, spent the 167,000, I bet you the service would still help Morris Turnberry anyways if there was a fire near the border, because you're communicating even with our repeaters, so they benefit anyway. So it'd be silly that's a lousy argument, is to not do it. So definitely we got to go for it, and Marty says it's a good deal, and partnering anytime we can is always the best way to go, regardless of what the other side gets. I don't care if they got $1 or $1 million. It doesn't matter to us. We get it reduced.
Mr. Faulkner.
For this, for the price that they're, for this system, will they be using their repeater on one of our towers? Or are they building their own tower, so they have their own equipment? I'm just thinking, because you have to lease a tower and if we're in a lease for $300 a month, and they decide in 6 months that they're not going to pay that lease anymore, and we have to come up with the money because it's our tower. I'm just playing devil's advocate here. I'm not saying that, I'm just saying because I haven't seen any fair play yet, so I just don't want to get in another one where we'll put the pipe in there and we'll do everything for you. Thanks for, plugging in the electric stove, but I'd have to see, if it's two separate systems, I'm good with that. If we don't have anything to do with them, once they buy theirs, we buy ours, we got our stuff, but if we have to partner with stuff on ours and ours on them, we just haven't had a good enough relationship for me to say, yes, I'll pay to spend that money.
Thank you. Go ahead, Marty.
Just through you, Reeve. There would be a shared annual tower rental and annual fees. So that's where the shared costs come in. That's the only shared part of this whole system.
So they can still say no.
So if they say no, then they lose their capability of using that system.
But we'd have to pick up the cost.
But they wouldn't be able to use it, so then.
Well, I know, but it would still cost us more,
and
pay the full price.
Right. So if that's the case, then if others come on, that's where you would benefit in other people coming on as well.
So now I have a question. Morris Turnberry has a PUC?
It's Public Works.
Oh, I was thinking of wastewater, and I'm going, anyway, okay, thank you.
It's the Public Works.
Okay, that they do have, thank you. I have to totally agree with the comments from Councillor Faulkner on the fact that there hasn't been a lot of fair play in 3 years. Matter of fact, there's been very little communication. Having said that, I still have to stand on the fact that in the report I read, this makes our firefighters safer. So I'll just end with that. So I do totally agree with what Mr. Faulkner, Kevin Faulkner's saying, but at the end of the day, I'm going to base it on the firefighters, and I want them all to come home safe. Any other comments? Seeing none, I have a mover and seconder. I call a motion. All in favor? Carries. Thank you. Okay. Okay, we're going to go to 7.6.1 Rural Economic Development Program. We're going to have our CAO, Mr. Evans, speak to this, if he'd like to.
If there's any questions.
Pardon me, if there's any questions. You've all read the motion. Do I have a mover? I have Paul moving. Do I have a seconder? I have Trevor Sipe seconding. Let's open it up the full floor for questions, comments, or concerns. Go ahead, Trevor.
Yeah, thank you, Reeve. This is not something that we have not tried before. This is coming back again. I believe it's a couple of years ago where we tried the RED grant and were unsuccessful at that point for this particular navigation. I mean, coming out of COVID, I think anything we can try to do to drum up movement around the municipality, I think is a good news story. I mean, at the end of the day, businesses, in order to survive, need patrons. And how better off to get them than having a bus tour or some other aspect about how we get people around the municipality. I think my perspective is, this is a small ask in $6,700 of North Huron's money that, I think we need, once we have this information, this is some of the information I think that economic development could use as to when you have this kind of money thrown or put in towards something like this, what is the traction? What is the information that you could use in order to get some idea about what movement was in the municipality? Those types of economic development benchmarks, in order to understand how this money truly benefited, not only residents, but benefited the businesses. Because ultimately, I think this is what this intention is to do right by our businesses, our business community, after 2.5 years of, in reality, and I hate to use this word, hell, because that's exactly what it's been. 2.5 years of hell, of trying to navigate COVID restrictions, and everything else that comes down the pipe. It's hard enough to run a business, but it's even harder to run a business during a pandemic. So, I mean, I think any support we can give as North Huron Council, and if we can get these grants, I think it's only going to benefit us in the future. Thank you.
Just before I go to you, Chris, I want to point out that this was a request of Anita Van Hindersums, our councillor that's not here tonight. She brought this forward to the Economic Development Committee, and we hashed it out. Anita and I both sat on the Futures program. I sat on it for 2 years, and Anita was invited to it, and it's something we tried out there, and it worked very well. And I have to agree with Deputy Reeve Sipe that it doesn't hurt to have a bus stop here and drop 5 people off from Godrich to shop on the main street of Wingham or the main street of Blythe. We all know our main streets are hurting, really hurting. So this is just so everybody understands, this is where this actually came from. Go ahead, Chris.
Thank you, Reeve. Yeah, 2 things. There's a 0 for the contract with 519 Tours, so of course the user pays for the bus. Is that how that would work?
Do you want to speak
Or
to
would it be
that?
subsidized by us, or what?
I'm going to have CAO talk to that.
Actually, I'll call on Denise in terms of with the financial figures.
Hey, Denise.
Through your worship,
How are you tonight?
I'm good. How are you?
Good.
So this grant, as we had said, we applied before through the SLED grant, which is a Huron County grant. And at that point, the pandemic was just too much and 519 wasn't operating. The reason that 519 is included in the budget, but at $0, is they wanted to see the form of transportation, and 519 just isn't the transportation, but the actual experience, just from past experience. So they wanted justification or resources that we were going to be using, so that's why it's in the budget. But it is at $0 because the customer will be assuming that cost. It will not be subsidized through our program or through North Huron.
Thank you, Denise. Go ahead, Chris.
And Reeve, this is just what I'm observing tonight. We're not having staff go over the, like for discussion, discussing their topic or their issue. I know we've gone through it and it speeds the process, but it doesn't help people in the audience or people watching. They maybe don't know what we're talking about. So I'm just curious as why there's been a change.
I could speak to that, Your Worship.
Do you want me to? No, you go ahead.
Well, so really, it's a best practice by most municipalities not to present the reports. I mean, that's why we spend all the reason writing the reports. The reports are all on the published agenda that you hope the public reads beforehand. And I know we've had some meetings where we were ending at 12:40 the next morning, right? So in an effort to expedite the process, really council's read the reports. If there's any questions about what's in those reports, we just found it to be a better use of everyone's time to focus on the topic at hand, because the information we present here is no different than what we've included in the reports, right? There should be no new information coming forward from staff that isn't included in those reports, and if for some reason there was, we would advise council of that in advance of the meeting, so you're not hearing something for the first time. But that was really the rationale behind it, and as well as overall compliance with North Huron's procedure bylaw. So I know Reeve Bailey a few meetings back did read a few excerpts from North Huron's procedure bylaw, and really to better align with that, that's kind of the rationale behind the change.
So just a quick follow-up to that too. So we're going more by Robert's rules. I played it loose and loud for the first 3 years. I felt there were times when condemnation took place to our staff that was not needed. But if that conversation would have been had between the counselor and the staff member ahead of time, there wouldn't have been the embarrassment that took place a few times, because there was a miscommunication or misunderstanding that can quite easily have been taken care of ahead of time, as he said, so we're not running into midnight conversations. So I'm going to bring it back over to what we have on the agenda right now, like what we're talking about, but I hope that helps you, Chris.
Yeah.
Okay? So anyone else on the economic, Chris, did you have a question to it though, or just that was?
Asked my question already.
Okay.
And this is my second one, yeah.
Okay, thank you kindly. Anyone else on this one? Not seeing anyone. Just wondering if I have a mover, please?
You have a vote.
I have a mover and a seconder. In that case, I will ask for a vote. All in favor? Carries. Thank you. Okay, correspondence 8.1, Dave Sparling, Chair, the appointment of the BIA. Do I have a mover for 8.1?
I'll move it as amended.
Was it amended from my copy?
So I think what Councillor Falconer is referring to, so the motion recommends an amendment from the letter, but the motion in front of council is not being amended. Really just to make those appointments exclusive of the alternate appointments, and the reason for that is the BIA's constitution does not permit alternate appointments.
Okay, thank you. Do I have a seconder? I have Rick McBurney seconding. Questions, comments, concerns? Not seeing any. I call the motion. All in favor? Carries. Thank you. 8.2, the Wingham Columbus Center request to be considered payment plan decision. Okay, do I have a mover for this one?
So there's no motion with that one, your worship. So staff will be seeking direction on to whether council wants to reconsider their previous direction provided on the repayment plan. I know the director of finance has materials prepared in regard to the overall financials of it. So at this point, it might be benefit in passing it over to the director of finance to kind of.
Well, that's exactly what I was going to say.
Thank you, your worship. So just to clarify for council, in 2020, there was an invoice presented to the Knights of Columbus, which partial payment was made. There remains an outstanding balance of $8,113.63. So this is from 2020. In 2021, there's a total invoice of $32,939.50. So right now, North Huron has within its accounts receivable system a total outstanding amount of $41,053.13. And this, of course, is in part what the letter and the discussion is about with the Knights of Columbus. Further to that, the 2022 budget reflects that the municipality would be receiving the full $29,000. Based on discussion with council, the expectation is that $14,000 of that would effectively be forgiven or pushed into the future for 2022 and also 2023, although 2023's budget is not set. So the reality is that we're talking upwards of $70,000 in total that could be outstanding for the Knights of Columbus to have to deal with into the future.
Thank you very much. Okay, let's open it up to council for a conversation. Go ahead, Deputy Reeve Sight.
So I guess,
Sorry.
maybe if I may, your worship, so if you, so you can't discuss, or you can't discuss the previous decision without passing a motion to reconsider, right? So if the discussion is in regard to your previous decision, council needs to pass a motion first on whether you want to, as a council, reconsider that. Then your next item of business becomes that actual discussion. That being said, if it's, so the Director of Finance went through the previous direction provided by council. So for example, and as council is aware, so in 2020, for the 2020 funds, council provided direction for those funds to be incorporated in a repayment plan. At the February 7th meeting of this year, council also provided direction for the 2022 and 2023 fiscal years to be a reduced amount coming in, but also to be incorporated in that repayment plan. So that's the direction you've provided. If you want to reevaluate that decision as requested by the Wingham Columbus Center, so your procedure would be to pass a motion to reconsider, and then you can have that discussion. That being said, the Director of Finance noted that $32,939.50 from 2021 that the Wingham Columbus Center is still seeking direction on, and that we as staff still need direction on. So I guess that's kind of the parameters you're working within. If you want to reevaluate your previous direction provided, you need a motion to reconsider. But that being said, if the 2021, you can have that discussion freely right now because you haven't provided direction on that, and certainly we as staff and also the Wingham Columbus Center need direction on that.
So, can I have a motion to reconsider? Do I have a mover?
Well, I will move the motion to reconsider.
Thank you. Do I have a seconder? Chris Palmer. Questions, comments, concerns?
So your motion to reconsider, so I'll flush it out here.
So I'll help the clerk here. So the reason for the reconsideration is we want to reconsider the whole as opposed to this piecemeal option. Like, so my recommendation is to reconsider both 2020, 2022, and 2023, actually, yeah, 2023, as it relates to your entire request in order to correspond to the entire request that the Columbus Center is asking for. So their request deals with all 4 of those years. I'm requesting to reconsider in order for us to make one motion to decide all 4 of those years so that staff has a clear direction as to what we're going to be doing for all 4 of those years, and the treasurer and staff can get a clear sense about what we want as council. Because I think from the piecemeal motions that have been going on over the past, year and a half, it's been broken up, and we don't necessarily, I can honestly admit that when I made the motion on February 7th, what I gave as a motion on February 7th was taken differently by the Reeve, what was taken differently by about 4 different councilors, and I can honestly tell you, it probably was taken differently by me because it was made at 11 o'clock at night on February 7th, because that was a 6.5-hour meeting. So I think we need to be, in all honesty, from a council perspective, to be transparent, we need to do the reconsideration for 20, 21, 22, and 23 based on the Columbus Center's request and give clear direction to staff that way.
Do you have a motion?
Yes, so your motion would be that the Council of Township of North Huron hereby agrees to reconsider its previous decisions to require a repayment plan to be established by the Wingham Columbus Center as previously directed by motions M30, 2021 and M61, 2022.
Thank you. Good, Kev? Or Trevor, good?
Yep.
Seconder, please? We have Chris Palmer seconding. Okay.
So because it's a motion to reconsider, it needs to be a recorded vote. Normally, anything passed within, or a motion to reconsider within the first years, more than a simple majority, but with a quorum of 6 tonight, or a council of 6 tonight, it's 4 out of 6 votes regardless. So I'll call the recorded vote. So Deputy Reeve Sipe,
Yes.
Councillor Falconer,
Yes.
Councillor Heffer,
Yes.
Councillor Palmer,
Yes.
Councillor McBurney,
Yes.
and Reeve Bailey.
Yes.
So that motion carries 6-0. So now your next item of business is that reconsideration of the repayment plan decision. So I'll turn it over to you, Your Worship.
Thank you very kindly. Would somebody like to speak to that? We will start with Trevor Sipes, followed by Kevin Faulkner.
Yes, thank you, Reeve. Just to elaborate on the discussions that I've had, me and the Reeve sat down with the Wingham Columbus Center after our February 7th meeting. And I mean, it was a meeting which was very well, I think, received by both us as, Reeve and Deputy Reeve, as well as the Columbus Center, in just the sense of there was some understandings that what went on between February of 2021 February of 2020, and what went on throughout the entire discussion as it relates to this, on how things just seemed to, was thought that it was being looked at, but yet it wasn't being looked at because it was under the impression that the director of recreation was going to communicate it to council, and I think council also made it a little bit difficult in trying to, commingle where the discussion about council chambers was going to go, and a lot of other things that caused a lot of unrest as it relates to the discussions as it related to, what the issues that the Columbus Center has. And in reality, the Columbus Center was very clear to myself and the Reeve at the time of our meeting is we have given you every ounce of money that we have from the province. We've asked for everything from the province that we're entitled to. We've given you everything that we've been given from a province perspective. There's nothing else more that we can apply for at this particular point. And what based on the discussion was they're looking for a reset. And in reality, I can't disagree in the sense that their reset is, their argument is, if I'm just going to move the balance owing from here to 5 years down the road, am I really getting any benefit? Am I getting any benefit in getting a chance to reset because of what COVID has done to this option? So, I mean, you know, and then on a secondary level, you know, we had a discussion with the Director of Recreation as well as Councillor Palmer when it talks about their committee discussions. And it seemed to be very clear in that meeting that everybody had a different of opinion about what we had actually moved and what we hadn't moved. So I thought from the perspective that we had, the letter that you have in front of you at council is the letter that I asked the Columbus Center to prepare to be very clear as to what they're asking for. And I think, you know, as the clerk and as the director of finance has been very clear as to mention on what those numbers are based on, the numbers that the numbers that they have in their letter are a little different than what, but we're only going to take what's in our finances because that's what the numbers are. So, you know, I mean, I think in reality, we need to look at this as and even I've been looking at this over the past, you know, 2 weeks to say, you know, what does this group do, not only from a benefit, from a cost perspective to the municipality, but what does this group do to the overall community? And in my mind, this community would be far less, would be far less if we didn't have the Columbus Center and what they do to the municipality, for the municipality. You can add it up. The schools benefit. The municipality benefits in the sense of we have rent, yes, maybe the rent isn't what the agreement leads, but there's a benefit there. That's a space that we could not absorb if we didn't have them. And in reality, there's a lot of other charitable organizations that actually benefit from the Columbus Center. I will put an example as one is the most dearest to my heart every year, around the middle of December. That Columbus Center feeds nearly 300 individuals and provides 250 meals to the food bank that if they weren't there, we probably wouldn't have that in our community. So when I look at the things that we give, what they give to the community, rather than what they're asking for, in reality, I'm looking at it and saying, is it the benefit of the municipality that we partnership with the Columbus Center? Because in reality, that's what it is. And I think what my position is, if we don't have them, this community is worse off. And that is really where I stand on that. How the municipality deals with, you know, 2020 and 2021, you know, my results is, you know, my position is, if you look at our reserves table, we have reserves that went into the working reserves that could fund those 20 and 21 numbers. The taxpayer isn't going to pay any less or any more for those particular items. In 2022, will the municipality have to figure out where 14,000 is going to come from? Yes, but I think we can find that number based on how we've been doing and how things have changed over the past number of months and weeks, because I guarantee you we've put a ton of money in there for COVID that may not have been needed now. So I think there's opportunities for us to find in 2022 that money, because we are in, again, we're in March. We have 9 more months to figure out where we're going to get that money and not be over budget. 2023, we haven't even talked about that budget yet. So in my mind, 2023, if we didn't make a decision on 2023, that's one thing. But I think whatever we decide, the discussion has been before is that they were looking, our motion was for 2 years to give them the 2 years. So if we're going to continue to that 2 years, we just budget not to have 29,000. We just budget 14 and assume the same discussion in our budget process. So, I mean, that's my position, right? That's where I sit, Reeve. I know council should have some more conversations. I'm not the only person here. But I mean, that's the conversation that I've been thinking of over the past 2 weeks, and through the discussions with the Columbus Center, as well as the questions that I've had even for staff, and if staff have even questioned me about what is the clear direction that you were giving on that day, I think this is what begs the question about where we should be going and how we should be benefiting not only the municipality, but supporting a great partner in the Columbus Center.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, Reeve.
Thank you very much, Deputy Reeve. Councillor Falconer?
Thank you, Reeve, through you, Reeve. Honestly, I agree with everything that Councillor Sipe has said. I have to play a little more of a devil's advocate in this. Of course, you all know I've had conversations about this with you before, but to whittle it down to its basic, it's a lease agreement between a property owner and a leasee or a renter. No different than anyone else out there that's struggling with COVID. I've got storefront owners, 4 stores live in Blythe because they can't afford the rent because of what's going on. No help for them. It's their tax money, they're paying into here just like everybody else's. And for us to make a decision without consulting them on our own behalf, I don't know what I'm going to say to them to give one person leeway and not the other. There's probably 12 organizations that we can come across here that are charitable and supply to the greater good of the people. We're not consulting them as what they need. They're not coming toward us to what we need. I just can't see where the process of giving taxpayers dollars to pay someone's rent for a couple of years to see whether they make it or not. I have to admit that, as with any other organization, they've had to change their ways of making up their money by their fundraising. The Lions Clubs, they've been doing pork barbecues and doing takeout meals, and they've continued on with their fundraising. Regardless of whether they can have people in, they hand it out much like they have it here at the Columbus Center. So it's to say that just because people can't go into a square building that is the reason why they're not being able to create the funding that they need. I propose that it may be even deeper than that. Declining as well, have the declining enrollment of people wanting to volunteer, the overall money that's available from the community that people can spend because they're all being rushed in. It all comes into fact. But it doesn't mean for the leap of faith to pay someone's lease, unless, as I've said before, as I've put to this council before, that we treat everybody the same. We haven't asked all the other organizations, and I will have to state once again that this is a private organization. It has its own rules, its own body, and as long as they're renting the property, that's fine. But as soon as they want public help in paying their bills, I just don't see that being a public problem, and then we're supposed to take care of the public's money and how we do it. And to say to put it into one specific private organization without consulting the rest, that puts everyone else at a disadvantage. Like I said, I can't go back to my constituents and help them with their rent just because their rent went up. Well, we're going to help somebody else because their rent went up or they can't pay for it. And my last point is, as an organization, as a private organization, I looked up today, $105 billion in insurance policies, $24 billion in assets as an organization. This is just in Ontario. This is just the Waterloo thing. They gave $1.5 billion to charity. It's 10%. If they're not in a position to help their own organization, who provides all this problem, they're going to lose out on the public's. The public's going to lose out. But then I don't see anywhere in here where the organization itself, as we've asked them for a repayment, has given any indication whatsoever that in the end of 5 years that we've lost the revenue from that building. I got an arena and bar, meeting room and buy that nobody rents anymore. It's not the meeting room fault. So I can't see the Columbus Center being, that building being the problem. There's, I'm just starting to ramble here. I can't spend taxpayers' dollars unless the taxpayers have their say. That's all.
Thank you very much. Go ahead, Chris.
Yeah, thank you, Reeve. No, Deputy Reeve, well put for everything that your comments. The difference here is that the Columbus Center, they're partners with us. It's our building. Other stores downtown, like, they're all independent. And in Blythe, did not one individual raise the rents on a bunch of them? Like, that's an issue. Someone should be talking to him, perhaps.
We should give them some money.
No, not us.
Oh.
Gentlemen, to the
Not
chair,
us.
please.
It's just, I think I feel good. I don't like giving money away, as you all know. I'm one of the last ones, needlessly. But I see this as a positive thing, and it's short-term. And I expect life to be more or less back to normal in 2 years. It should be, or we're all sunk. And, I think we should go ahead with this and help them out, and because they are our partners.
Thank you very kindly. I'm going to go to Paul first. He had his hand up, and then back to Kevin.
Yes, thank you, Reeve. Yeah, I'm always tight with letting money go too, I guess, maybe, but I did look at the actuals here in 2021, and I'll be honest, I missed that when we're going through our budget thing. I don't know how I missed it, but I did. And the actuals in 2021 is user fees was $14,000, but when it boils down to the actual utility, and that's being the utilities, it actually is $11,486 is what it showed on their because of the use of the arena not being used. So and they came up with $7,000 for the electricity, $7,800, $600 for the water sewer, and for the gas, just about the $3,000. That comes to $11,000. And then there to get it up to the $14,000 that they're talking about was bills that we have to pay as building maintenance there of $1,600 and $1,700 for the insurance. Our building, we have to pay the insurance for that. So I'm seeing that they're on the hook for paying $19,000 per year in a sense from the utilities. And I see in a year where we can see what's going out with the ice not being in there, this is what it came out to. So I feel that we owe them a break, and I really like to see before we carry on that much farther, I feel that whoever looks after with this committee, I think it was Chris there, and them, I feel that has to be looked at. See, it's not even coming up to the 19,000, and that's what they're getting binged for. So that's my thought, Reeve. They've only spent 11,000 of that 19,000. That's 8,000 right there a year that they shouldn't be paying.
Thank you very much. Kevin?
Thank you, Reeve. If we're going to do that for a organizations that, maybe they need to downsize, maybe they can't afford a big building. Some people have had to downsize and move their business back into their home in order to make it. I just don't see us being able to, perpetually afford this, or even have the right to do it. Are we gonna let someone into the Blythe Arena just so we can have someone in there and pay for their, or the Blythe Hall? It's just, I can fill it with somebody for free if we're going to do it. I'm glad we're all kind-hearted, but business is business, and sometimes business is tough. And I don't see any progress in 2023, or, I'm not even gonna go into, put this on some other council. I'm not gonna go past the end of this year, because we don't have that right to do that to them. We've had that done to us. Then you get shoehorned into a bunch of money. So I just don't see how that works out. Maybe you guys can tell me.
Go ahead, Chris. Or, sorry, Red.
Through you, Reed Bailey. In regards to the Knights, I support looking after them. In regards to, do they hold functions there and rent it out, or have people come in? How do they work that?
They do, but they haven't been able to because of
Right,
COVID.
but
Everything's
as a
yes.
normal thing to make money.
Yes,
Yes.
And they have the kitchen there, of
Yes.
course, with all these meals.
yes,
And with the COVID being down for 2 years,
they can.
they're broke.
I just want to touch on one that, and again, I've talked to a couple councilors about this before, is we've had a lot of hard decisions. This is simply just another hard decision. When it comes to supporting groups, we support as many as we can. So I've talked to a couple of you about this earlier. We support the theater in Blythe. It is town buildings they're in. We charge them $1 a year, and that's all we charge them. We support them because they are a good thing for our community, and there's nobody going to argue with me on that one. Yes, they pay their heat and hydro. Yes, they pay upgrades too. But remember, going way, way, way back when I was on council before, they came and they asked for $500,000 to upgrade that town-owned facility from the township. Not 50,000, 500,000. And I was one of the ones that put my hand up, and I have no regrets. I love it. I love what they do. They're so unique. So this, again, is another, I consider it the same thing. It's another big chunk. When the United Church came to us, we understood that they didn't have, I know it's much smaller, it's only a few $1,000s, but we gave them help. We give everybody help that comes our way, but that's our job, and if we're good business people, we can finance that, we can make it work. And there will be a payback down the road. There always is a payback down the road. I just want to put that out there, that we do help everybody, and not just this council, every North Huron council. Go ahead, Kevin.
Thank you, Reeve. I take exception of putting those two organizations in the same bowl.
Mhm.
They have nothing to do with each other. They operate totally different. In one hand, you can go to the theater. I can't go to the Knights of Columbus meetings. I'm not a member. My ethnicity prevents me, through their process, of being able to do that. So I can go to the theater. A woman can go to the theater. A woman can't go to the, like, we're asking to make decisions here on more levels than you think. It's just, I wanted it down to, at the beginning, just down to, it's a lease. They broke the lease agreement. I'm just getting the feeling that the only thing that people have to do, the corporation of North Huron, is say no. We're not gonna pay for it. And we'll spend 4 years moping around trying to get stuff done, and as long as they say no, we're good. There has to be a stop to it. If you want to find the money, which I fully agree with, it's not my argument point. I want them to succeed. I wish that we could give them the money. If we had it, I would. but we've already passed our budget. And if we had a truck that needed to be done, that broke, they would have to come and ask us for a budget approval to get that. I don't see any difference in that than the rec department having to come here. It's their building, it's their rent. They have to come and get budget approval for that. But it has to come out of their budget or somebody else's budget. I just can't see us just picking this out of the air, past budget. And
I
you know,
don't want to...
I just get, I know I'm passionate about it, and I get going on different tangents about things, what you're allowed to do, but that part about the theater, yeah, it's maybe they get it for $1, and we put money in it. We still own the building. All the money we put into that building, we still own it.
Yeah.
If they were coming here and they wanted $300,000, which we just put $200,000 into there for sound effects and new lights and everything, if they wanted to keep the building up, it's our building. We put money into it.
Yeah.
But they want us to finance the business.
Yeah.
We're not in the business of financing someone else's business.
I don't want to challenge you, and I do not want to drag this on, but I will say that I do not think you can go to the meeting if it's a board of directors meeting for the theater, but you can go and pay to get into the theater. You cannot go to a board of directors meeting, whether it's the Legion, the Lions, or whatever it is, and or this council, nobody gets to speak without my permission, our permission. So you do not go there, but you can go to their dances, because I've been to a few good ones. So I just want to throw that out there, that they are similar as far as a business setup. Having said that, I'm not going to prolong this. I'm not going to start an argument with anybody. Would anybody else like to speak? Kevin, is there more you want to say? Anybody else want to speak?
No, I'm just one vote.
Yeah, thank you. Go ahead, Trevor.
Just want to make comment. I mean, I recognize that we are dealing with public funds. And when you deal with public funds, it becomes it seems to be a contentious issue as to how those funds are being used. I mean, as a taxpayer of North Huron, I want to make sure that we're fiscally responsible in ensuring that we're providing those things. I look at it a little differently in the sense that if we do, I look at it here's one way I can look at it, is if the Columbus Center didn't exist, let's just assume that they don't exist. We as North Huron may get more requests for support from charitable organizations requesting some type of support. And I would argue that number could equate to more than $60,000 a year, potentially. Schools, churches, charitable organizations, operating companies, the list is endless. And I understand the passion about it. I want to thank, Councillor Faulkner in the sense that he's passionate about making sure that we're being fiscally responsible. The one thing that I will say, though, is we at this council, every decision that we make is not a prerequisite to the decision that anybody else can come and just say, well, you made that decision on that group, you need to make that same decision on us. That's not how life works. Life isn't always fair. Life is not always equitable. We try to do our best to make sure that we're treating everybody the same, but not everybody's arrangement is the same. And I know this council, the Director of Recreation has made it very clear to this council, it is sometimes confusing in the sense that we've got arrangements and agreements with groups that are not consistent. And the reason we do that is because not every group or committee has the same needs and the same wants. One thing I will say is the lease agreement and I think we've recognized this now, more than any time now, the lease agreement that we have with the Columbus Center needs some updating and it needs some clarity as to what is owed, what is not owed. We're not gonna, the municipality's not gonna invest a significant amount of money to get a new hydrometer or whatever. The price is the price, that's the way it should have been all along, not make up some rational change and all that stuff. As Councillor Heffer has mentioned, the lease agreement says one thing, but the actual costs associated to the Columbus Center might have been actually lower, and they've been they've been charged the higher because that's the way the arrangement is. So it's not always fair to them as well. So, I recognize that the one thing I will say, these 4 years that we're talking about, 2 years of it, they were unable to operate at all. From a perspective of being able to have dances, have they had revenue? Yes. You still have Sue doing her things, her kitchen stuff, their takeouts, all those things, so that they can still try to support these groups. But they have made it very clear, they're robbing Peter to pay Paul, and who they're robbing are the community groups that they're supporting. And those community groups need that funding. And as well as anybody can know, is that community group needs the funding because of the situation that we're in with homelessness, shelter, all of those types of things. So I recognize that this is a difficult decision. And at this point, here's the motion that I'm going to put forth. That the Council of the Township of North Huron for 2020 and 2021 forego the $41,053.13 to be funded through the working capital reserve, or the working reserve. For 2022, the municipality agree that the Columbus Center will pay $15,000 plus HST for the utilization of the Columbus Center for 2022, to be funded by the Director of Recreation and Treasury to find the $15,000 in our current budget. And in 2023, that the Council of the Township of North Huron budget $15,000 plus HST and therefore the council then relook at the agreement at the time, which would be somewhere in the neighborhoods at the end of 2023. That's what my proposal is, and that is my motion. I hope it's clear enough for everybody.
I'll flush something out here.
So just so I'm clear, no repayment terms, no repayment terms.
And now is the time to ask the questions, gentlemen, because as Deputy Reeve Sipes said when we were sitting in a meeting and we started talking about it, we all thought we meant something different when it came down. Go ahead, Kevin.
So we're proposing to push this on to another council.
I think the idea is to give the next council a year to have its feet solidly in place and then deal with the situation rather than right up front. Am I right on that?
So what I'm proposing is, this council originally requested or allowed the Wingham Columbus Center the 2 years. We had already made that motion to allow them the 2-year reduction to the 15,000. So I'm not changing that part of the motion. I'm just making sure that there's clarity as to there's no repayment terms requested. That's all I'm making clear. Because that's not what it was clear before.
Go ahead, Kevin.
What are the consequences at the end of that? There's still no ending to that. It's an open-ended agreement that they can go back to in 2023, 2025 and say the same thing. You've already done it for those 4 years, you can do it for the next 3. Is there any finality to it? Do we ever get closure?
So I will answer that, Reeve. The closure is the reestablishment of the lease agreement in 2023. So the lease agreement comes due at the end of 2023. So that will be the discussion with that council and that committee to have that conversation with the Columbus Center as to what their operating requirements are necessary. And that's at the time where the municipality can negotiate as to what is a fair and reasonable assessment about what they should be charged and what the Columbus Center needs from an operating perspective. And then they can work together to ensure that will be the discussion moving forward, as opposed to this going forward. And that's why the reason that 2023 was the finality of it.
A follow-up question on that then. They're currently already in violation of the contract. So the contract wouldn't last till 2023, unless it's written in there that nothing can be decided no matter what till 2023. They're already in conflict of the conditions they already had in the past. Does that nullify that contract? And we have to, right from this day forward, have a contract that stipulates this support?
Sorry, Reeve. No. What this does is this motion becomes an addendum to that agreement, that lease agreement. So the lease agreement doesn't stop. The lease agreement is still, their conditions of the requirements are still required to do their X, Y, and Z. The only part that's changing is the actual dollars that need to change hands in those times. And then in 2023, as we indicated to them, or at least when we talked about that arrangement, when we said that we would allow up to 2023, is we knew the lease agreement was coming due, and then that would be the discussion. I think ultimately from what we've heard from the staff and councilors alike, is the agreement is not clear as opposed what isn't true understanding about what is surely the value. So I mean, this is going to allow that council and that committee to really talk about with the Columbus Center as to what that arrangement needs to be, and then lock it in and understand that that will be the council at the time to determine to the Columbus Center is, here's the arrangement. We're not hoping that we're going to have to deviate from this arrangement again. You've been given forgoance from the previous one by the previous council, and we as understood, as this council has said, we're giving them this way to get a reset, and in 2 years, that council and that committee can look at it as the point is it a way to operate, or can it not operate in its current position? That's really the thought process between when we put in the 2022 and the 2023, because then it would align with the lease agreement.
So, if I may, Your Worship,
Yes.
I'll read what I have pulled together here. I might have missed a little bit at the end in regards to that contract piece, so you might have to add to that. And I've changed the language around a bit to hopefully provide clear-cut direction. But basically, the motion right now would read that the Council of the Township of North Huron hereby directs for the following as it relates to the request from the Wigham Columbus Center. The $8,113.63 owing from 2020 be waived. The $32,939.50 owing from 2021 be waived. That $14,000 in relief, which being $5,000 towards the deficit and $9,000 towards utilities in relief, be granted for 2022 and 2023 and not be required to be repaid by the Wigham Columbus Center. And further, that the loss of revenue for 2020, 2021, and 2022 be funded through the working capital reserves. And further, that the 2023 fiscal year be budgeted accordingly in the 2023 budget to reflect the updated amounts to be received from the Wigham Columbus Center.
I just want to make sure, I'm looking at the Director of Finance, when we say 2022 to be funded through working capital, or working reserve, is that the proper, because we're actually going to be trying to fund that through our normal budget by just moving things around, right?
And that being said, the director of finance might potentially have a better way to fund this, so it might be prudent to.
Thank you, through your worship. I like the Deputy Reeves' suggestion of the working reserve, as a starting point. The reality is, though, is that working reserve, is a $3.5 million in it, I think, or something along those lines. But it's a culmination of a whole bunch of projects. And that money really needs to be parsed out into different reserve funds as part of the asset management plan process. So everything from landfill to fleet to facilities to different projects that we've got on the go, that's what makes up that. So it's not really free money. My suggestion would be, if council's desirous of this, is to actually use the 2021 surplus. So we're going through the audit process right now. I don't know what the final number is going to be, of course, but it is going to be 6 figures. So council could use the 2021 surplus to fund 2020 and 2021, the $41,000 that's sitting in the accounts receivable, effectively writing that off. I also agree with the Deputy Reeve that 2022, we should be able to just capture that within the budget. Vicky's group had money for COVID and some other priorities that certainly aren't going to be, the same right now, let's hope, as long as, things stay the course in the province of Ontario. And there was also other funding that, we're going to be getting this year that's going to help offset. So I think we can just kind of incorporate that into 2022. And then finally, to the Deputy Reeve's point on 2023, we'll just budget appropriately for that year, so there won't actually be any impact. So I would suggest using the surplus for the write-off amounts moving forward.
So, and just for clarity, Darcy, so the 2020 and 2021 amounts owing would be covered through the 2021 year-end reserve, but the 2022 amounts will be covered through the rec department's operating budget?
Yes, so it would actually, through your worship, it would actually be the 2021 year-end surplus.
For all 3 of those years?
Yeah,
Okay.
no, just for 2020 and 2021. You said year-end reserve, it's actually the year-end surplus.
Sorry.
Yeah.
Yeah, so, but the piece I was seeking clarity on is the 2022 amount, that would be covered through the operating budget of the rec department as opposed to the 2021 year-end surplus.
That is correct. And the reason that we say that is that, the rec department's total budget included, I think, something like $132,000 in overall COVID costs. And a lot of that had to do with contract staffing to be the kind of the check-in and the greeter at the different facilities. Now that that's beyond us and we don't have to worry about all of that contact tracing, certainly we've incurred some of that, up till this point. But moving forward, it won't cost us anything, hopefully, again, as long as things stay the course. So there'll be savings in the budget that we can offset that $15,000 loss.
Thank you very much.
So the only piece, Deputy Reeves, was there something in there about the contract as well?
Well, I don't think, and I don't think there is a necessity to add anything, because the actual lease contract ends in 2023. Is that correct? I'm looking, I believe it is. Vicky, could you clarify?
Through you, your worship, the actual agreement, I believe, is June of 2024, but we would start discussions at the end of 2023. Because there was, I think when it actually went through council on bylaw, it was it would come up in June of 2024, but we would definitely be into discussions. Clerk Lamb may be able to pull that up, I'm not sure, but.
I think the Columbus Center, as well as council, is aware that this is a conversation that is going to start earlier rather than later. And council's going to be aware of what's going on from a year-over-year perspective, because we're going to have conversations about what our budget looks like. So, I don't think there needs to be anything labeled as to the contract. I mean, ultimately, the contract's gonna come available. It's just whether the conversation becomes at that time, with that new council as to whether they want to talk about what January to June was or whatever. But I suspect, as the Director of Recreation has indicated, these conversations are going to happen earlier than June of 2024.
Kevin?
I still don't want to put it into halfway through another council's. I think that we've only got the right to shackle ourselves, not someone else. We've had that done to ourselves and we didn't like it.
And just for clarity, so I was able to pull up that bylaw, so the agreement was originally entered into for a 5-year term that ends June 30th of 2024.
My statement still stands as to whether they are in violation of that contract.
So would you extend it one more year then?
No,
Deputy
no,
State?
we as council gave them 2022 and 2023 in our original motion. So I'm not deviating from that.
Okay.
All my deviation is no repayment terms. At the end of the day, that's all I'm deviating from.
Okay.
So we as council already allowed them the 15. So I'm not deviating from that. The conversation is that engagement is still they're not violating because they've actually asked for forgiveness. So they're not violating anything. We are actually addending the original lease agreement based on our motion here tonight. So that's what we're doing.
Okay. Paul?
Sorry, Your Worship, I'm kind of hidden down here.
You are.
Yeah, sorry about that, but no, just touching on that, when the agreement ends and everything, if council wishes, it can end at the end of 2023. I just spoke with our guests in the audience and things. If that's, if that's going to be a contentious issue and things, they're more than willing to do that based on Deputy Reeve Sipes' discussion and what was in the letter, that they said the end of 2023, so.
Do you need a second?
So then I will amend it to include that the agreement ends June or December 31st, 2023.
So we would need to bring back a bylaw anyways.
Yep.
So I would recommend that and further that an updated agreement be brought forward for council's consideration.
So do we have a motion on the floor then?
Yeah, I'll read it back. You have a mover so far.
Take your time. Yep. And this is COVID for you, ladies and gentlemen. This doesn't happen every 2 years, 4 years, 10 years.
Better not.
This is COVID. Nobody made money. Anybody else want to speak while we're waiting?
So your motion on the floor would be that the council of the Township of North Huron hereby directs for the following as it relates to the request from the Wingham Columbus Center. The $8,113.63 owing from 2020 be waived. The $32,939.50 owing from 2021 be waived. That $14,000 in relief, being $5,000 towards the deficit and $9,000 towards utilities in relief, be granted for 2022 and 2023 and not be required to be paid by the Wingham Columbus Center. And further, that the loss of revenue for 2020 and 2021 be funded through the year-end surplus. And further, that the 2022 loss of revenue be covered through the Recreation Department operating budget. And further, that the 2023 fiscal year be budgeted accordingly in the 2023 budget to reflect the updated amounts to be received by from the Wingham Columbus Center. And further, that an amended lease agreement with an updated end date be brought forward for council's consideration at a future meeting.
Mover?
Absolutely.
Seconder? Everything's fine?
Very much.
Then I call the,
Sorry, Chris, second?
Yes.
yes. I call the motion. All in favor? That carries. Thank you. Okay. I'm going to move on. Next is 9.1, the Reeves Activity Report. I really have nothing to report this time again. There will be a lot of reports coming out, I believe, in the next council meeting. 9.2, council members. Verbal or written updates from members who sit on the boards or committees. Trevor.
Yes, thank you, Reeve. I did want to bring an update to council as it relates to the Wingham Community Connectors Group. So the Wingham Community Connectors Group is a group who has been working very hard through COVID to provide a betterment to the municipality in a number of different ways. However, this one, we have hoped to got through the finish line. Councillor Heffer and myself were present at the last meeting. They have been working on over the past, 6 to 8 months is a welcome package to new residents of the municipality. So not necessarily has to be Wingham, but I mean it's North Huron as a whole. And what they did is they put together 25 welcome packages of information that the municipality has. And I must admit, we've got excellent support from staff and people. Denise Lockey helped me. I helped to provide a lot of the information, but yet I will use her as the beautification person as it relates to how it looks as opposed to the information that's presented. So I mean the community group has put together these 25 packages that are going to be distributed. I believe Councillor Heffer was providing one to a new resident that lives near him. I've got two actually in my car if I can ever get to a real estate office when they're open, to provide one to the RE/MAX here in town as well as Royal LePage, to see what the feedback is. The information in these packages are able to be recreated. There's obviously some, gifts and, kind of the freebies from, stores and those types of things, marketing stuff. But I mean, for the most part, it's information that presents the municipality as a welcome to our area. So, I mean, the community group has been working very hard trying to finalize this over the past 6 to 8 months, and they've done and to me, I think they've done an amazing job to get it through the finish line, and they are going to be working, so that I thank them for that. Their next opportunity to work is they're actually working to get a volunteer fair, and I think I've mentioned this before, is to get a volunteer fair to potentially help with our struggling volunteer base. As we all know, it is dwindling. The same people are volunteering for multiple different groups. So I think they're looking to do that as their next kind of organizational work. They actually had that already started when COVID hit, and it obviously didn't fiduciate when COVID hit. So they're working on trying to figure out a way to make it more beneficial and match it to another event or another thing to make it beneficial to the municipality and the community. So I will say that's a great plan on their behalf. So that's the only information that I have. Reeve Bailey, the only other mention I will say is that we did have a very exciting, I would say a very informative information at a police board meeting. Vice Chair McBurney was at that meeting as well. I have to admit the detachment commander, is very open and for information as it relates to how they are looking to better, police in the municipality, but also, deter. He used the terminology, I want to make the criminals less comfortable. And he's used that terminology more than once. So, he's written a couple of different grants that we're working on in order to get some equipment that, yes, the municipality would be getting a grant for. We would be paying for it. Yes, it may potentially be used outside of the municipality, But in all reality, I think ultimately, if it can be used inside the municipality, the Police Services Board, and I think the municipality will be better off with those tools in order to ensure that we have a proper and effective policing in the municipality. As well as I did want to mention, the CAO has been very open to us as well as to the Police Services Board, letting us know when the transitional agreement is coming due. That transitional agreement is coming due at the end of this year. And I believe that, the conversations are starting to begin, and council will be having more discussions as it relates to what kind of level of policing they want in the municipality as it relates to Wingham. Obviously, we already have the 5.1 in Blythe and East Wawanosh. It'll just depend on how we're going to go forward with the municipality in the town of Wingham. So, I mean, ultimately, those are the types of things that are moving forward as we can see. A lot of that other stuff, as it relates to Police Services Board and all that stuff, all is going to be based on when or if the Police Services Act gets amended. And I can tell you right now, with the upcoming election, I would suggest that there's nobody on the Police Services Board that's waiting with open arms to ensure that agreement is going to be made before June. So I mean, at the end of the day, I think it's going to be looked at by the next council, in my mind, but I mean, I'll leave it at that. If there was any questions from any councilors about what I've just presented.
Thank you, Deputy Forsyth. Any other councilors? Go ahead, Chris.
Yeah, thank you, Reeve. I attended the Huron County Federation of Agriculture MPP dinner. I believe you, Reeve, were there online. Yeah, it was a very informative. It was nice to have MPP Lisa Thompson and MP Ben Lobb. They were here we had their ears, and that was good. Now, Ben, he is sanctioning a private member's bill on the carbon tax, and it's to reduce it for farm grain dryers and in farm buildings. It would certainly help farmers in that regard. Fertilizer is going to be the big deal, nitrogen fertilizer, because about a third of it or so comes from Russia, and their ships are not getting here. And so it's going to be very challenging for farmers. They say if you didn't have an order in by near the beginning of March, you're not going to get one. So that's very serious. All the agricultural commodities were there, so of course, they were talking about things that were problems and things that were good. And Lisa Thompson, she talked about $25 million towards meat processing. So we've talked about that in the past, that it's a short supply in our county, so hopefully somebody takes her up on that. And it's for new and improving. That'll be probably the bigger one, is improving existing packers. A little side note, greens. At this point, there's not enough provincial meat inspectors. So they can only slaughter 1 day a week, and they wish to expand, and they can't. So Lisa Thompson she understood that one, so hopefully they can increase the number of people. It'd be a good career. I'm really surprised that there's a shortage. But anyways, that's just a tidbit of it, and it was... I didn't feel, this is maybe a negative, I didn't feel there were enough municipal individuals there, representatives, about half, I thought. And it's, the farm-related ones were there, and, it's nothing new for us, but it would have been nice with some of the others. Other than that, it was a good meeting.
It was a little difficult to hear over the YouTube, so they were nice enough to send me a copy of the entire
Good.
meeting, so
Okay,
yes. Yeah, it was really nice of them because it was difficult to hear.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, thank you. Anyone else? Not seeing any. Are there any comments by members? Notice of motion by members. Let's go to bylaws then. Can I have a mover for bylaw number 12, 2022 zoning bylaw amendment of 166 John Street West, third read? I believe I have to back out of that one. I just realized that family involved.
Okay.
Sorry, my apologies. You'll have to pick somebody from the council to run the council for that one.
Okay, so due to the disclosure of pecuniary interest by both Reeve Bailey and Deputy Reeve Sipe, so I'm looking for a counselor to chair agenda item 10.1.
Sure. Chris can do it.
Okay, so then looking for a motion that the Council of the Township of North Huron hereby appoints Councillor Palmer to chair agenda item 10.1. And just bear with me as I catch up here. So do I have a mover of that motion? So Councillor Heffer moves and seconder. Councillor McBurney seconds. So all in favor? So that carries. So Councillor Palmer, did you want to assume the chair?
Okay, thank you. Okay, so we have 10.1, bylaw number 12-2022. It's a zoning bylaw. Being a bylaw to amend bylaw number 82-2008 as amended, being the zoning bylaw of the Corporation of Township of North Huron for the zoning bylaw amendment as it applies to lots 367 to 370, registered plan 410, Wingham Ward, Township of North Huron, and that's 166 John Street West.
And so it's being read a third and final time. So council's given 2 readings to this bylaw already.
Okay. And, okay, who makes the motion? Councillor Heffer, do we have a seconder? Councillor McBurney, all in favor? Carries.
So Reeve Bailey, you're good to assume the chair again.
Bylaw number 37-2022. Do I have a mover? Kevin Faulkner moves it. Seconder, please. Trevor Sipe seconds. All in favor? Carries. Bylaw number 38-2022. Do I have a mover? Trevor moves. Chris seconds. All in favor? Carries. Bylaw number 39-2022, the appointment of the interim treasurer. Do I have a mover? Paul Heffer moves. Chris Palmer seconds. Sorry, Kevin Palmer seconds.
Councillor Falconer.
Sorry. And it's not even midnight yet. Kevin Faulkner seconds. All in favor? Carries. Announcements. The special council meeting will be held on Thursday, March 24th, 2022 at 9 a.m. in the North Huron Town Hall. The next regular council meeting will be held on Monday, April 4th, 2022 at 6 p.m. at the North Huron Town Hall Theater. The next Economic Development and Recovery Committee meeting will be held on Thursday, April 21st, 2022 at 2 p.m. at the North Huron Town Hall Theater. The next Wingham BIA meeting will be held on Thursday, April 21st, 2022 at 2 p.m. in the Hot Stove Lounge at the North Huron West Cast Complex. The next Blythe BIA Board meeting will be held on Thursday, March 31st, 2022 at 8 a.m. in the Blythe District Community Center. Other business. Anybody have any other business?
Reeve?
Yes, sir.
Sorry, I forgot to mention one thing. We should be seeing shortly the BIA, the Wingham BIA, the sign, the advertising sign. I shouldn't say advertising, the special events sign.
Yep.
The LED sign that they had been working on over the past 2 years. is looking to be installed by the end of this month. So, I mean, that's a welcome final project for the BIA, and they're going to be working with the BIA members and stuff to make sure that it's well utilized in the next coming year, well, especially with the opening of the municipality and COVID restrictions being lifted.
Yes, thank you very kindly. No other business? Okay. Closed session and reporting out that the Council Township of North Huron hereby proceeds at 8:30 PM to an in-camera session closed to the public under section 239-3.1 of the Municipal Act for the purpose of education and training session on the following subjects, and you guys have all read that. Do I have a mover? Paul,
That's one we should probably read for the benefit of the public.
Oh my
I can read it.
Work, that's all I do. Land Use Planning Procedures Education and Training Center. An in-depth review of the purpose of the different types of planning applications and the related planning procedures. And further, the Council Township of North Huron hereby proceeds into the in-camera close to the public meeting under sections 239-2-K of the Municipal Act to discuss the following: the position, planning, procedure, criteria, and instructions to be applied to any negotiations carried on or to be carried on by or on behalf of the municipality or local board, North Huron Museum relocation proposal. And further, that the CAO in items 1 and 2 and the Clerk Lamb in items 1 and 2 and Planner Holman in item 1 remain in attendance. Do I have a mover? Paul moves. Seconder, please. Rick seconds. All in favor? Carries. Thank you.
5 minutes, Rob?
Yes, 5 minutes.